Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Raider Nation? Welcome back to another edition of the Raider Squad Show, joined alongside Lincoln Kennedy and Q Myers. Thank you so much for supporting the show. If you do like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Also, you can follow us on our social media channels. You'll see in the description below where you can follow us on our personal accounts. But if you've been leaving comments, and of course, you can also hear us on the audio side as well. Leave a rate and review. And shout out to Q, because I saw that the Locked On Raiders made it to 20,000 subscribers. That's a massive. Congrats, Q. Really quickly, what was it like to kind of see that growth and just your show grow like that?
It's just been awesome. It's just a tip of the cap to Raider Nation. Just shows how passionate Raider Nation is about the team, right? And I've honestly got so many great comments about this show, and this is only the 4th edition that we've done of this one, but I've gotten so much great feedback, of whether it's on my local radio show or the podcast voicemail line. So just really, like I said, tip of the cap to Raider Nation, tip of the cap to YouTube, because you're doing a fantastic job. And again, it just shows how passionate Raider fans are. So it's not because of me, it's because of them. So we definitely appreciate them.
Yeah, big shout out to Raider Nation. And we have a stacked lineup today on the show. We're going to let you know if the Raiders should still be pursuing some free agents or if they should hold off until some cuts are made as well. We're going to give you a couple of names. Some players might have a prove-it season, and we're going to specifically focus on the defense and let you know who needs to prove it this season. Also, Pete Carroll is definitely shifting the culture. We're going to talk about that and the aspects of a culture change. But before we get into all that, we got to pay some bills, right? Because today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So make sure if you're going to be betting, FanDuel is the spot. But guys, I think we got to start off, talking about, and Link, this is your expertise right here, because we're going to be talking about the O-line. And obviously one of the biggest focuses on the O-line is Jackson Powers-Johnson, and, rookie season, had a great rookie year. And I feel like expectations are extremely high because there are some questions about the O-line, which you and Q will get into. But Link, let's start off with you first. When you have that breakout season as a rookie and everyone's talking about you and you're going into your sophomore season, how do you kind of still continue to grow and have people see that growth, knowing you had such a great first year and you're coming into your second year and they're still expecting you to grow a little bit more?
Well, I had the privilege of watching JPJ at Oregon when it covered a lot of Pac-12 football, when the Pac-12 was in existence. And I knew that the grade that was coming out on him was well-deserved. He was projected as a first-round talent, and he slid to where he did, mainly because of the injury issues that people had issues with drafting a guy that high. All the world, all the expectations, all the talent came down on his shoulders, rightfully so, and I think well-deserved. Now, I will say this before we get into too deep. I was critical of him last year because there were a number of times he had penalties that I thought were uncalled for and mistakes that were uncalled for, especially, jumping off sides at home. There's no reason for that. And I understand the tenacity. He's one of those throwback guys like I was used to, guys that want to clear the piles, want to come out for nasty and stuff like that. That's exactly what the Raiders need. They need that. They got to have at least one guy in there that what I like to say would go out there and hit people and cause snot bubbles. So, but so with that being said, today's game has been a controlled violence, is what I say. Violence between the whistles, and you got to play like that. So, we talk about the importance of the center. For those that don't know at home, the center is the general of the offensive line. The center is where everything starts, obviously, because he has to snap the football. But as he approaches the line of scrimmage, the center is going to design the most dangerous people. More times than not, it's the 3 or 4 down guys that the offensive line, the bulk of the offensive line, calls for. And then there's a linebacker. He points to that linebacker, unless he's overridden by the quarterback. How is that important? It tells the line who to expect, who's the most dangerous, where the blitz might come from, how we have to adjust our protection. So that's valuable. Then you have to get the snap back there to the quarterback. That's also very important. You can't go anywhere without the football. And then you talk about playing, and you got to have that leadership. This is such a young group, mixed with veterans, but they're from other teams. And that's why I say it's a young group as far as building the cohesiveness and the chemistry. And it starts with one guy. It starts with the center. That's why JPJ is very important to this whole scenario moving forward. What do you think, Hugh?
Yeah, I agree 100%. And remember, he started out the season as the left guard, right? And then he slid over to the center position, which is more of his natural position where he really excelled there at Oregon. But you know, training camp, we were in Costa Mesa, Lincoln, and he was in the tub. Right. You can pick the club in the tub. He was in the tub because he wasn't healthy. So he had to ease his way into the season. So he started off a little slow, similar to Colton Miller. And then he started to get his legs under him. And then he slid over to center and you can see a little bit more natural. But yeah, Lincoln has talked about it till he's blue in the face about, hey, you can't hurt your team, right? You can help your team. You could be that guy, whistle to whistle, you know, maybe a little to the edge, right? You want that guy that's going to push it to the edge, but not over. So you cause those penalties. He's just got to learn where the limit is, right? And I mean, the Raiders have had a history of having great centers throughout the history of their organizations. And I would say that Rodney Hudson was one that was a fantastic center mentally and physically, right? And so that's where JPJ really needs to excel, is that, okay, he's got to be able to be, as Lincoln said, the general of that offensive line. He's got to have his head in the game and the physicality. I like JPJ a lot. I've had an opportunity to talk to him multiple times this offseason. He sounds like he's matured. He feels like he's, even healthier than he was last year, and he's ready to go. Just the way he greeted Ashton Genty when he showed up to the facility. Hey, I'm your center, right? I'm gonna be out there blocking for you. Like, you could tell he's on a mission. Now he's got to round into form. I think he will, but it's still a learning curve for him.
Yeah, and you mentioned the physicality, and the thing about, JPJ is that's his nickname. I feel like we should call him IHOP because he serves pancakes all the time. The physicality and strength is there, but he's so exciting to watch. And then you talk about, the positional change, and he's more in his natural position now playing center. Let's take a look at the rest of the O-line, because despite the fact of him being young, I feel like he's already kind of taken that leadership role.
Yeah.
And when you're in your second year and you've taken that leadership role, what do you think it says not only about him, but just the fact that he's kind of looking at his future here with the Raiders? You talked about the great centers that this franchise has had. Q, we'll go with you first. Like, what that kind of means for him and being in this Raiders organization.
Well, I just think it breeds confidence with the rest of the players in the locker room, especially those guys in the offensive line, when they see a young pup like JPJ all of a sudden take a leadership role. And I'll tell you, even his rookie year, I remember going back to rookie minicamp and him talking. I could tell that this dude's got leadership skills. And again, that comes natural from being the center there at Oregon, because as Lincoln said, the general of the offensive line. So he already has natural born leadership skills, and he's got that, and he's continuing to grow into that. Also, what should make Raider Nation pretty excited, and this team, is that he took it upon himself this offseason to get into better shape, right? Lose some weight, gain some muscle. He's out there working with Max Crosby early, doing all kind of Max Crosby type drills, and we know that he works endlessly. So just to show that a young guy in the league has said, hey, I know that there was good things I did my rookie year. There's things I need to do better, and getting into better shape is going to help, especially with the scheme that they're going to be running on that offensive line. I think that is not, without saying a word, that's also showing your commitment to the team and the leadership ability that you have.
Chip Kelly has always been notorious with pushing defenses with plays, running plays quickly, in and out of the huddle quickly, moving sideline to sideline quickly, because he wanted to wear down defenses. And that has resonated. And when you look at where this offense has gone, I know it's still early, but you look at where this offense has gone, it's absolutely necessary. In regards to JPJ, look, I've always believed that leaders aren't born, they're made. There's going to be a time where a person is supposed to stand up and be counted. And I can appreciate a young man coming into this league, realizing the importance of the investment that he puts within himself, his mind and his body, to be ready for his teammates. Normally, I would say this is a place for Colton Miller, because there's so much uncertainty with your future. There's got to be someone who stands up in this crowd. There has always been, within the Raiders organization, there's always been a natural hierarchy amongst the player groups. I remember back in our day with Steven Wisniewski for a time when I first started. And then when Steven stepped down, that crown came over to me. And of course, I took it. And I believe leaders should lead by example, not necessarily to be so boisterous or put their voices and yell out there. Lead by example. And that's what JPJ is doing. And that's the standard that is being set for this offensive line. And it's absolutely necessary because, as I said before, guys, this is still a young group. They have yet to gel together. And so much uncertainty with the overall health with Dylan Parham, and we'll get into it, and stuff like that. And Colton Miller. Glaze is still trying to play himself. There's so many things that are going on, aspects of this offensive line that has to come together for this team to be successful.
Another thing I wanted to ask you guys about was, you mentioned a couple of other guys on the O line, DJ Glaze. What can we kind of expect from him this season? You have Colton Miller, and we know that there's some talks going on about the contract and whatnot, but he's still
Right.
showing up.
Yeah.
Right. He's still showing up, and he wants to be in the silver and black. Then you got, your center in JPJ, and he's losing weight for the season. He's getting ready. He's being a leader on this team. Then you got a guy like DJ Glaze. What are your guys' thoughts on him this season? And obviously, I feel like JPJ is probably being the best teammate to him, encouraging him. Link, will go with you first. For a guy like DJ Glaze, what do we want to see from him this season?
First of all, I'm thankful. I'm thankful that we finally covered up the hole at right tackle.
Yes.
For so long, there has been a blatant hole at that position. And no matter what the Raiders try to do,
Since you were there.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're going back that far. It's true.
That's the last time that it was a solidified position. I
look, and I appreciate that, Q. But the thing is that it's so necessary, and I am so impressed with Glaze. Didn't have a whole lot of tout coming into the league last year, but played his ass off, and he played and definitely deserved that position. So, and I've seen the growth, and out of the OTAs that I've seen so far in the spring, I've seen the growth. He's matured and he's getting better. It's important. You got to solidify as much as possible. I love Colton Miller. I loved him since he came out of UCLA. I followed his entire career. Has some unfortunate with injuries, and I don't know what the future holds with the contract. I'm not in those negotiations. It is what it is, and we never try to come between guys and their own money. But I would say this offensive line is absolutely essential for this offense, and these 5 guys have got to come and play together. And whatever the combination is, it has to solidify. It has to settle because these guys have to get to know each other. So the sooner the better. So we'll see when training camp opens up, when they throw in the pads, they start hitting. We'll see. We'll get a feel for it. It'll start early. And depending on how Pete Carroll wants to manage it and the staff wants to manage it, we'll see what they throw out there. But look, it's essential.
Yeah, it is. I was really impressed by DJ Glaze his rookie year. I mean, being in Costa Mesa, ready for training camp, day one, Thayer Munford is in there, and he gets a little bit banged up, and they say, hey, Rook, get in there. And he didn't hesitate. And there's some guy across from him named Max Crosby who's, you might have heard of him. It's pretty good, right? And so he's out there, and it's almost like he didn't flinch because he didn't know any better, right? He didn't really realize the situation he was in. Was he perfect? Of course not, right? I mean, and he had moments where, okay, that's a rookie moment. He just got beat. But he never, ever flinched. He never, ever seemed like the moment was too big for him. He was very well prepared. I talk a lot about Iowa State guys being ready to play in the league. I feel that's the same conversation we could have with Maryland guys. I always feel like those Maryland coached up guys, they have a little bit of different breed to them. They're kind of overlooked a lot of times, and so they come into the league with a little bit of chip on their shoulder. That's who DJ Glaze is, right? And he's like the friendly giant, right? I mean, but he's ready to go. His rookie year during his rookie mini camp, we asked him, well, where do you prefer to play? He said on the offensive line. Wherever they need me to play, I'm good to go. Like, I'll be ready to go when my number's called. And he lived up to that.
One more just before we move on, guys. I want to throw a little caveat in there about Thayer Munford. Look, this young man is a utility player. He's good. He's a good player, okay? He can play every position other than center on that offensive line, which is good. The Raiders need depth. But I'm impressed with him. I think the step that the Q is referring to, and I think it affected him. We'll see how it affects him mentally. Last year when he had those nagging injuries and couldn't stay on the field, and DJ Glaze kind of came in and took over the position, that's kind of a little setback mentally, and I could see that because he was projected to be a starter. Still capable, and depending on what goes on with Cole Miller, he might be our left tackle. But he can very well do that and move around if need be. But I have the highest expectations of Thayer Munford because I do think he's a good player. Just needs to find his spot and need to find his space. I'm hoping the Raiders find a way to hold on to him.
Yeah, and you guys make some great points there. As for DJ Glaze, I thought he had a pretty great season as well last year. I think it was that Saints game where him and JPJ were just balling out in that game. So I think it kind of gave them a little bit more confidence heading into this year. And, going back to JPJ, I don't remember what podcast it was on. It might have been Max Crosby's, but he had all the rookies over at his crib. And he had them over and he was talking about how a guy like Jack Besh was like, I got to go and read my playbook. But the fact that it was his second year and he had all the rookies there, he's such a team guy. And I think it shows that leadership in your second year to be that guy, calling over the rookies and kind of being a leader. That shows a lot. Before we move on from this, guys, one more question, Dylan Parham. What do we want to see from him this season? Because I feel like, we're going to get to a prove it season in a couple of segments, but I feel like it's for Dylan. This is a very important season. Q, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, I think this is a very important training camp for him, to be honest with you. He's got to find a way to stay healthy. He's got to find a way to stay on the field. He's been a really good guy as far as being in the league with the Raiders. He's played multiple positions, all 3 positions on the interior, as a matter of fact. So he's shown his versatility, but he's got to find something to really master and say, hey, this is what I'm best at. I think there's going to be a real deal of competition when it comes to the guard positions in training camp. And I think that Dylan Parham's going to be right in the middle of it. A mandatory mini camp, we were watching him practice. Then I see him limp off the field into the indoor facility. You're not, Lincoln says it best, you're not going to make the tub or the club in the tub. And so he's got to be out there. He's got to be available. I think training camp's going to be huge for Dylan Parham.
Consistency. Yep. You have to be able to rely on a guy. You have to know that he's going to be there in every game, as many plays as possible. I'm not expecting you to play every down as hard as you possibly can, but I need you to be consistent because I need to rely on you. There's certain skill set that he has for that position, and it's absolutely imperative that he stays on the football field. You're doing me no good if you're watching from the sideline or you're not in gear. So for me, Dylan Parham, it comes down to consistency. Find a way to stay healthy, stay on the field. I don't know how you do that overall. I don't know what's going on with his body and the injuries that he's had, but I've seen a lot of times where he's been in street clothes and not on the field. And that does me no good as a person covering the team.
Yeah, and coming up, guys, next we're going to talk about Pete Carroll and the culture change that the Raiders are seeing already so far this season. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Podcast Network while you watch or listen to the Raiders Squad Show. Well, summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions and new fun ways to bet. Sometimes there's bonus bets that you get. And right now, if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, guys. Well, one of the most interesting, topics heading into this year was just the addition of Pete Carroll, because we know what type of experience he brings. We know the type of, championship level that he coaches at and what he's done at USC, what he's done at Seattle. And now the Raiders have him as their head coach. And I feel like everyone's already kind of seeing the change in terms of the culture. Now, I feel like this is a pretty deep conversation because a culture change is really subjective, right? Because for players that have been there, they've experienced a different type of culture, and then a new coach comes in and starts changing around a few things. So, Link, we'll start with you first. The Pete Carroll culture change right now, I mean, he's having fun at camp. He's tackling guys. He's 73 years old. He looks like he's 40 out there, right? What do you think Pete Carroll has brought already to this organization, just in terms of his vibe and kind of how he's handling the situation of being the head coach for the Raiders for the first time in his career?
In my 11-year career, guys, I played for 6 different head coaches. It's not necessarily a good ratio. Every coach I ever played for, the first thing they said in team meetings, I want you to buy into my program. I want you to buy in my philosophy. I want you to join me. I need you to come with me. And from my sitting as a player in those meeting rooms, I'm like, okay, I'm all in. But what has to happen is the results have to turn to wins. Everybody wants to win. You want to win games. From all I've known, I've never had a chance to play for Pete Carroll, but from all I've heard, players love him. In places that he's been, players love him. And I see that energy right now with the Raiders. As we talked about earlier, this is a very young team. When you talk about it, the overall scope of this team is extremely young. So you've got a number of guys that you want, according to the ones, especially the ones that are important, like the Max Crosby's and so on and so forth, to buy in. Geno Smith bought in. These types of guys have bought in. And what they do, they bring that energy, they translate that energy throughout the locker room. That's absolutely essential, especially when you start. There's going to be tough times. We played the schedule game the last show. Mm-hmm. They're not going to win every game. Right. Let's be realistic. Not going to win every game. They might not even make the playoffs this year. So how do you keep the energy, high and have them play hard throughout the year is a very trying task. And from what I've seen, and again, it's still really new, brand new, I've seen him do that job and bring that energy by the way he shows up at practice, the way he runs around, plays with the guys and, kids with the guys and his overall attitude. The nation loves him. The Raider Nation loves him, as well as all the players so far. So I think it's a good start to changing that culture at that facility.
It's a good fit for what the Raiders needed. And it's funny because every time there's a coaching change and when you start to see at the end of the season, you see the coaching carousel, you see all the different openings and you start to, all right, that's the best guy for the job. That's the best guy. Everyone's name that they had at the top of the list was Ben Johnson. Obviously, he chose the Chicago Bears. He was coach number one. Even the Raiders went after him, right? They had an opportunity to catch up with them. Pete Carroll is what the Raiders needed. I didn't realize that at first, but he the culture that we were talking about, the culture change, he's able to bring that, but not just talk about it, not just say, oh, this is what we're going to do. We're going to change his culture. We're going to get back to winning. He also brings a resume that says, yeah, I'm going to bring my style. And oh, by the way, it's worked, right? Here's the proof of concept right here. So if you need to check my resume, check my resume. Going back to college, going to the NFL, whatever you want to do, it's worked, right? And so then these guys start to believe in it. Now, all of a sudden, you set up all this competition all over the building, right? Always compete. That's right there on the building as soon as you walk in, right? Always compete, always compete. So now they have that in their mind. They got basketball hoops all over the facility, right? They get into shooting contests all the time. They're making it fun, but it's still competition. It's still hard work. Even looking at the training camp schedule, like every day is a theme. Right. And I don't know about you guys, but back in high school, remember homecoming week? Like there was a theme for like every day of the week. Like that was fun. Right. I still had to go to school. Right. At the end of the day, I still had to go to school. But it's like, hey, I want to go because today is whatever day. Right. Throwback day or whatever. And it's like, hey, that's fun. You put a theme on stuff. It makes it more fun. It gives these guys something to look forward to. Oh, today's Turnover Thursday. Let's go get some turnovers. Let's get fired up. It's just little things like that he has proven that he can do. And oh, by the way, you go out there and you start winning games like Lincoln says, then you really start to believe in everything that's going on. Ryan Clark said, I had him on my radio show one day when Josh McDaniels was the coach because he had been out at practice. And then I said, what did you see for training camp? Just like Lincoln will tell you, I ask him all the time when he's out there, hey, Lincoln, what are you seeing, right? I love to hear from people smarter than me. And I asked Ryan Clark, I said, what are you seeing for practice? He said the guys aren't having fun. Guys aren't having fun. Coach needs to loosen up and not having fun out there. And that always resonated with me because we know how Josh McDaniels and that coaching staff and how that all ended up playing out. These guys have to have fun, but they also have to work hard. Pete Carroll is bringing that blend to this team.
Let's keep in mind, guys, this is still a game.
Right.
It's a game. I mean, we sit here and we talk about it like it's a matter of life. And I get it, Raider Nation, to the importance of, hey, football. No, trust me, I get it. But it's a game. And the thing is that you have to have fun when you're playing games. Yes, it's work. Yes, it's important, but you got to have fun. Make your job fun. What better way, the way I saw it is, what better way for me to go and knock somebody on their ass and be like, hey, welcome. You like it? Let me pick you up. Okay, all right.
Yes.
Let's go back. Let's do it again. And then line up and do it over and over again. And so that repetition, it's still a game. You got to have fun out there.
You guys have both been around this team for, you've seen the changes that they've made in coaching throughout the years. And we'll go with you first, Q, for this one. What's the change you've seen just from the outside looking in, being around the team, being at camp? Like, what's been the difference this season that you've seen, from last season or previous years?
It just seems like the energy is there, the energy and the buy-in early. And again, it's easy to buy in when it's mandatory minicamp or OTAs and you're not out there with, pads on and you're not knocking anyone on their backside like Lincoln's talking about. But you can see the buy-in and the excitement and the juice from the players. It doesn't seem like they're just going through the motions and saying, all right, I'm here. OTAs were voluntary. The majority of the team was there, and the ones that weren't there were not there for really good reasons, right? It wasn't just that they didn't want to show up. It's like everyone is excited about this next step, and they believe in the guy in charge. They believe in the guys around them. And one thing that was as a matter of fact, that John Spytek and Pete Carroll told us about in Indianapolis ahead of the scouting combine, and it's true through what they did through free agency, what they did through the draft, and so on and so forth. They want guys that love football, right? And there's a difference. There's guys that play in the league that don't necessarily love football, but they love what football does for them. And that's fine. Like Pete Carroll said, that's fine. That's not a problem. You just don't have a place on this team. We need guys who love football, is willing to put it out there for their brother, and ready to go to work. And I tell you, from just being around those players in that locker room, it's 91 of them right now because there's a roster exemption for the international program. they seem like they all love the game and they all want to put it out there on the line for each other. Again, it's early. Training camp hasn't happened yet. That might change in the dog days of summer and everything. But right now, it seems like the energy and the juice has really just gotten in these guys, and it got there early.
We talked, and we'll talk extensively more about free agents, possibility of free agents. My biggest issue with a lot of free agents these days is they become check chasers rather than football players. They're trying to get their last little big splash as much as they can before they move on. And that creates a sort of a negative concept in your locker room, because if guys aren't as passionate about being, I don't care what name you bring into the locker room. Right. There are other guys who know who they are, but if you bring in a concept, the guy just chasing the check does you no good. So you got to be careful. And that's much to what Q is speaking on about building the proper team. And that's something that's been devoid of this program for quite some time, how to build the proper team. We're not just chasing namesakes. We're not just chasing people because we have the money to spend. Yes, that's a good quality, but you want to make sure you have the right people that enhance that locker room. That's why guys like Max Crosby and those other guys that have been in there are so invaluable. And we'll talk about some of the younger guys who need to have an impact, who need to rise into this. There's been so much turnover on this team over the years. It's hard to look at there and say, well, that's a consistent player, or I know that you can rely on it. And unlike many other teams in the National Football League, that's what has hurt the Raiders the most. Mm-hmm. When you look at the number one, the overall, the top draft choices that they've had, where are they? Where are a lot of the first round picks? You've had to have third and fourth round picks make a big impact on the team. That's not a problem, but most teams are known for their first round picks, their first and second round picks, their high picks. When Derek Carr was a teammate, he was a second round pick. When Khalil Mack was here, Amari Cooper, all these guys, and they're all gone. So where are you talking about the overall foundation of this team pushing forward? No matter who's coaching, no matter who's at the helm, where's the overall foundation has yet to be seen. Now we're relying on guys like Max Crosby, and that's so well-deserved, absolutely. But there has to be more than one or two guys in that locker room.
The other thing, Lincoln, is, and you hit it on the head with this turnover that the Raiders have had, especially at the GM position and the head coach position. I mean, this is 3 new GMs in 3 years, 3 new head coaches in 3 years. You can never develop that consistency, because I might like a right tackle that's like Lincoln Kennedy, right, if I'm coach 1, but then, hey, coach 2 might come in and, hey, well, we're going to do a different scheme. And Lincoln Kennedy doesn't really fit with what I want to do. So now you spend all year scouting for the guys that I like, and now I'm out. Yep. Right. And then so that's why you can never develop the consistency and the depth that this team needs. So now you're hoping. I think Tom Telesco, I give him credit. I think he did a good job with collecting talent the 1 year that he was there. Did he do everything right? No, but he was able to collect some really good talent, I thought, in the draft. I think John Spytek going and getting 11 draft picks, and we'll see how many of those pan out. I like the makeup of those guys, but they're starting to create a foundation that Lincoln's talking about. Now you know what kind of players they're looking for. So now you can go and get players like that year 1, year 2, year 3. And now you look up after 3 years, and you've got a cupboard full of talent that you believe in and you trust in, because you know that this is the kind of guy that I'm looking for. But when you have that constant turnover, Lincoln, as you know, you can't build that. You just can't.
Yep.
Yeah, and we've seen the constant turnover for a really, really long time, going back to Dennis Allen, Hugh Jackson, and then you went into the Jack Del Rio era, which I thought was a really good era, and they started kind of make some changes. And as a fan, I think you kind of saw the changes happen there. And that was the year, I think 2016, where, the Raiders made the playoffs that year. Mm-hmm. Derek Carr ended up getting injured, but that was a really good year. And then, they were moving to Vegas, and I think they kind of did Jack a little bit dirty. I'm not going to lie, because I liked what he was building. They brought in John Gruden, and then Gruden was like, we're going to get rid of a lot of these guys. Yep. Right. We saw Khalil Mack go. We saw Amari Cooper go. And as a fan, you were just like, man, we're not keeping Khalil Mack. Right. And that was heartbreaking as a Raider fan. But we saw the change. And then there was, the Gruden years. I feel like Raider Nation was a little bit positive. And then there was the turmoil. Right. So Raider Nation's been through a lot. And even last season with Antonio Pierce, like, he was a fan favorite. I loved him as the coach, despite, not having a bunch of experience at head coach. And I think when you give coaches like 1 year to make that culture change, I think it's so unfair.
It's impossible.
Because it's like, how are you supposed to change the culture in 1 year? Yeah. So, and I loved AP on the team. I get the decision to go with Pete, but I feel like it was a little bit unfair. But I think Raider Nation, and you can drop it in the comments, you can kind of see the culture shift. And just like he was saying, Pete Carroll is probably the best fit for the Raiders. He has the resume. And I think things are, looking up right now, and people can really just see from the outside looking in that there is a change that's being made right now. Guys,
Yeah, I agree. Mm-hmm.
Any final thoughts before we move on to the next segment, guys?
I think that what you said about AP was spot on. I was a big AP supporter, and I think he had a lot of really good ideas. And I do think he started the culture shift when he took over as the interim coach at the back end of 2023. The problem is that he was so inexperienced that he made a lot of bad decisions, right? A lot of bad hires and didn't put the right people in place, and may have had too many coaches on the coaching staff as well. And this is the difference between AP and Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll's got a long resume of saying this is actually how we do it and it'll get done, where AP was just trying to feel his way through it. And unfortunately for the Raiders, they didn't have enough time to allow a guy to just feel their way through it. Right.
Well,
they got to get back to winning ways.
Yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's long overdue. I mean, we're talking about 2 decades without really having an appearance on. But
last playoff win was in 2002.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. I was there. Anyway, here's the thing, and my closing words for AP. Look, he had a plan, but he needed help. Yeah, he was, because it was brand new for him to be a head coach, and he tried to throw so many things. He brought all these former coaches in to try to create a world, to try to figure things out, and just couldn't get things done. Plus, he took a gamble, and when you take a big gamble, especially at the quarterback position, and it fails, right? I was impressed to the fact that this team's sort of identity changed. Never since I've been affiliated with a team have I known as a defensive team. Now we are a defensive team, rightfully so, well deserved. But you need offense. And what pained me, as I said, and we talked about it before, you have first down and goal on the 3-yard line, you can't get in. Right. Or you have a 4th down and 1, you can't get a first down. And it's like, well, this blows my mind, especially when you talk about the people that you have up front. But it just wasn't happening. And so when you gamble and make as decisions and they fail like that, you have to make a change. And much to what we were talking about as far as culture change, you have to create a culture that people want to be around. The Raiders have a beautiful facility. Allegiant is a beautiful stadium. They have money. They have all things to spend. But you don't want to throw grass on a dumpster fire to make it worse. You want to try to find a way to put the fire out and make things better. And I think that's what had to happen with the whole culture change.
Yeah, and I'll say one thing. I think AP could only work with what he got. Certainly. When you give him Gardner Minshew as your quarterback, who should probably be, second string, like, no disrespect there. I know people are real serious about, the Gardner Minshew era. Some people love him because of how good he was in college. But and then you have, Aiden O'Connell, who's like a young guy, and those are your quarterbacks. That's a lot of pressure for AP. He could only work with what he had. And, it's a little bit unfortunate to see how that all went down. But I think the Raiders' new era with Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, the players that they brought in, Geno Smith, this shows the experience of Pete Carroll, Spy Tech. They're doing what they can, and it's really exciting for Raider Nation. Drop your comments. Remember, this is an interactive show. Let us know what you think about the Pete Carroll era and also just how he's kind of shifting the culture. Coming up next, we are going to talk about what guys on the Raiders defense needs to have a prove-it year. Keep it locked here on the Locked On Network and on the Raiders Squad Show.
What? Real quick, what?
So, guys, this is really interesting right now for the Las Vegas Raiders because I feel like there's a lot of pieces on the defense, a lot of new pieces, a lot of young pieces, and some of these guys got to prove it this year. Q, we'll start off with you first. What guy on the Raiders defense do you feel like needs to have a prove it season that can not only prove it to, the coaches, the organization, but also to the fans?
I think that's the easy answer. I think Tyree Wilson is number 1 on that list, right? He was the number 7 overall pick just a couple of years ago. He's now on third head coach, third GM, right? As I mentioned before. And he came into the league. He was banged up. He wasn't expected to play very much his rookie year, and he was thrown into the fire because of the Chandler Jones situation. And, he just really got off to a slow start. Last year, you started to see him come around a little bit, but at some point, you've got to prove who you are. We've spoke to him multiple times. Mandatory minicamp, he acknowledged that. He said this is definitely a big year for him. He's a guy that I believe has the ability to play inside and outside. I'd like to see him master one position, right? I mean, I don't need you to play multiple positions if you're only going to play him decent, right? I'd like to see him really step up and play at a high level at one position. I don't know if that's going to be the interior or outside. We'll find out. I believe what he was able to do at Texas Tech. I know his head coach there, Joey McGuire, and all he had to do was give rave reviews about Tyree and the kind of person he is. You see glimpses of it, but Lincoln, that's going back to consistency. You don't see it consistently from Tyree Wilson. So this is a huge year. At some point, the Raiders are going to have to make a decision. Are they going to pick up his 5th-year option? This would go a long way if he has a big year in proving that the Raiders should pick up that option.
Guys, I'm going to go to the secondary. Isaiah Palomal is a big year for him at safety position. The reason why, under Patrick Graham's defense, that safety is either required one or two things. He's either going to come down and cover a tight end or a back, or they're going to have to stay and play in space. And more importantly, you've got to take proper angles to stop the run game. There are a lot of times where there have been runs that break out from the line of scrimmage because the Raiders do so much up against the line of scrimmage. There's not much in the secondary where it's absolutely imperative a safety come down and fill that hole and take that, that gain away from making it a disaster. And I've seen so many safeties in Raiders uniforms take poor angles in the past. Isaiah Palomal is a big deal for me. The fourth-year player out of USC. I think he has to have a tremendous year. And much like his family member, Troy Polamalu, I think he needs to come of age like his old his cousin is.
The thing about Isaiah, Lincoln, you saw it up close and personal last year. As the season went on, after being thrown into the mix when Marcus Epps went down, you saw him get more comfortable. Right. You saw him start to come down and really start to lay the wood on some of these ball receivers and seeing the ball pop out, winning a defensive player of the week award for the grade. I mean, there was moments where he was really good. I think he's just going to continue to get better, right? I mean, because now he's not being thrown into the fire. He's going into training camp as a starter. He knows they gave him that contract extension. I've been saying it for a long time. Those contract extensions are not for what you've done, but what you're going to do. And that's what John Spytek has been trying to preach as well. So I think Isaiah has an opportunity, especially under Pete Carroll. I mean, if anything, Isaiah should be excited knowing that, Pete Carroll's history of working with defensive backs in general and just the secondary, knowing what they were able to do in Seattle with the Legion of Boom. And I'll transition that to say another third-year guy that has to prove it this year also in that secondary is Jacorian Bennett. Absolutely. Jacorian Bennett was having a hell of a year last year until he went down. We found out when we talked to him that he had the torn labrum. His shoulder was popping out multiple times a game. He'd go to the sideline, pop it back in, and get back out there. It hasn't been right since college, right? And so he shut it down finally last year, went, had the surgery. He said he feels healthy. He's bulked up. You can see he's got some muscle on him, some more muscle on him. He was playing outstanding ball until he went down last year. So I'm interested to see, can he continue to do that? He wasn't running with the ones in OTAs and mandatory minicamp, which I take with a grain of salt, but that's just something to notice, right? I mean, he's not the prototypical Pete Carroll type defensive back. He's a little bit shorter. He's got the speed. He had a lot of pass breakups, PBUs. He had 8 PBUs last year before he went down. But as he told us, I want to turn those PBUs into INTs.
And I think it's worth mentioning, just to add a caveat, when you talk about Patrick Graham's defense, sometimes he's going to play with a lot of secondary players. There are going to be a lot of times they're going to be in space. You need to have a veteran or a person who's familiar with that defense. I think Isaiah is there, and I think you talk about some of the other guys. Because it is such a young group, they're going to have to come together and play well, especially when they're in space, because there are a lot of times where people want to flood those zones with receivers, and you see guys just double cover, some guys wide open and stuff like that. There are going to be a lot of cover two breakers the offenses are going to do. We can't get into too many dialogues now, short on time, but this is absolutely essential that they have a good qualified safety back there who can really line people up, because now he becomes one of the captains of the defense.
Yeah, and Q, you kind of mentioned it. Isaiah earned that deal, but also when you're getting that deal from an organization and you had to step in last season, due to injury, and you made some mistakes, but you also learned a lot. What do you think that does for a guy like Isaiah this season, knowing that the organization has confidence in him, knowing that Patrick Graham has confidence in him? Because I'm sure Patrick Graham had a lot to do with that.
Oh, there's no doubt about it. And it gives him a lot of confidence, right? And he told us such, that he feels good that the organization believes in him, but now he wants to go out there and reward them for the trust. And think about this, and Lincoln knows this very well. This is not a guy that was drafted in the second round, third round, or fourth round. This is a guy that was an undrafted free agent, a guy that was a camp visit, and he found a way to catch the attention of the coaching staff 3 coaching staffs ago. Right. And found a way to stick around and continue to work and grind and get better. And all of a sudden, when he had to be thrown into the mix, was able to do it. And similar to what we said earlier about DJ Glaze, how he was thrown into the mix in training camp. Well, this is a guy that got thrown into the mix in the season, in the regular season, and found a way to get better throughout the course of the year. So this guy, you want to talk about truly earned it. This guy has truly earned it. This guy was a camp visit because he went to USC. And it's regional, right? So they're able to have the camps. They say that USC is a local school, and okay, we'll take that. That's fine. It's on the West Coast, local school, fine. But that's how he was able to come. It wasn't a top 30 visit during the draft. It was different, and he found a way to stick on the squad. So if anyone has earned it and know what it's about to go out there and bust their backside to earn that job, it's Isaiah.
Yeah, and I feel like he kind of proved it a little bit last season, but this season I think that's a great choice link for him to prove it this year. I really like the Tyree Wilson aspect. That was going to be my pick because, like you mentioned, that he wasn't like a third, fourth, fifth round pick. He was a seventh overall pick. And coming in, I remember on draft day, they were like, okay, we're going to see him, beside a guy like Max Crosby. Like, this defense is going to be absolutely elite. And I feel like we just haven't seen that growth from Tyree. And I want to see it because I think this is the year where he will have to prove it. Also with, Malcolm Kuntz, he's been spectacular. Obviously, we want him to stay healthy. But a guy like Tyree, I feel like there's a lot of outside noise, too, on whether or not Ziegler made a bad draft pick. Right. Well, like when you're hearing that as a player link, like you would know this the best. Like, how do you kind of deal with that and all that outside noise?
To just add a little point to the Tyree Wilson situation, the Raiders knew what they were getting. Yeah. They knew they were drafting a guy who had an injury issue coming out of college. Yes, you took a big chance on drafting him, but he's such a freak, physical wise.
Yeah.
That's what stood out. They're like, oh my gosh, he's got these long arms and he's tall and he's got this speed, unbelievable edge rusher. So you're adding to complement Max Crosby, but the Raiders knew what they were getting. They knew they were going to have to put him in the tub for a while to have him sort of defrost and come into the zone. In the interim, Malcolm Kuntz comes on and other guys have shined. And now you're sitting here wondering, oh, where's this first round draft choice? Where have they been? Whenever you draft a guy in the top 10, if you miss because he's projected to be a starter, that's the reason why he drafted him in the top 10. If you miss, you set yourself back for 4 years. There's no way around it because it's going to take that long to recoup. But with Tyree Wilson, the Raiders knew what they were getting. They knew they had an injured player. They knew they had to sort of bring him back into, and now he's coming into his own. We'll see what he can do. I agree with both of you. This is a make it or break a year to me for him.
Yeah, and just in terms of like he missed that first camp his rookie year.
Yes.
So how do you think that had an effect on him, his, rookie season, even, during his sophomore? Yeah.
He was hurt. Yeah. It was just, I mean, you don't want to put him out there and make it worse. He was hurt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. We know that he can bull rush, right? We know that he has the strength. It's there.
Right.
Like it's absolutely crazy. But then there's also that skill aspect of, have we seen Tyree Wilson really grow in the years that he's been in the league? And I think that's the biggest question. Do you guys feel like he's grown in skill? Because we know the strength is there. We know the power is there. Like you said, he's an absolute freak. But I feel like in his position, it has to be more than just strength because everybody in the NFL is strong. Yeah, especially on a defense.
I think he's definitely continued to develop and he's getting better. I just don't know if it's fast enough. Right. I think we've seen glimpses. I know we saw glimpses of it last year. There was times where you say, OK, there's Tyree Wilson. There he is. He's OK. That's what they see in him. That's great. Right. Those kind of moments you feel good about. He's made some plays. He's gotten to the quarterback. There's a lot of times where he's gotten close to the quarterback. Right. Almost there. He's that almost guy. Well, you can't have him be that almost guy. He's got to be the guy that finishes. So that's what he's got to learn to do consistently. It's got to be a little bit quicker. I mean, Link knows when he first came into the league, he was really slow off the snap, right? I mean, you could see him getting off the line of scrimmage last, right? But that was some of it still being injured. Some of it was still, trying to get the muscle memory down, trying to get used to the speed of the game. So he's got to go out there and he's got to figure it out. That's why I think this year is such a big year, starting with training camp for Tyree Wilson.
Every defensive end I've ever played against has had a double move. They've had a complement move once the first move is taken away to be able to go to their backup, and it has to be quick. You're thinking about there's 3-4 Mississippi was the count that was internal. The quarterback needs to get rid of the ball. It has to come out of his hands. The great thing about Max Crosby is that there were times Max was trying to improvise and the defense sort of had to cover for him, which is good. I mean, of course, it's nothing disciplined, not undisciplined, but he's just out of control getting to the quarterback. That's what you have to have at defensive end because there has to be a sense of urgency where you have to go right now. Once that first move is blocked, the offensive guy, I got to do something quick and I got to find a way to have that passion to get to the quarterback. That fire was not necessarily burning in Tyree early in his career, mainly because he was injured, coming off and still trying to get familiar with the defense, the speed of the league. We've seen how Max Crosby has transcended that position and what he does for that defensive end. And more importantly, how the defense sort of has to cover up from behind him if he jumps a gap. And he wasn't supposed to go in the B gap. He was supposed to go to the C gap. There has to be somebody there to take up that space. That's what this defense builds on, and that's the consistency and the cohesiveness that comes with playing on the football field, playing at NFL speed, and playing with your other guys.
Yeah, and I think this defense, there's still a lot of questions because there's a lot of young pieces on the defense. Yep. But if there was going to be any season for Tyree to prove it, it would be this season. Also with the questions about, Christian Wilkins not being 100% healthy. And then you got Malcolm Kuntz. We know how good he is and how much of a surprise he was. So for Tyree, is this not the perfect situation for him to kind of show the organization that I can be this great and I should get another deal? Because you take a look at a career of, an NFL player, and it's like, is it going to hit that, 10-year mark? He is a 7th overall draft pick. So you would think that other teams would be interested, but is this not the perfect situation for Tyree to kind of prove it to the fans and the organization?
Oh, there's no
Absolutely.
doubt. Yeah, there's no doubt. Again, this is, to me, it's make or break for Tyree this year. Like he's either gonna, what do they say, S or get off the pot? I mean, he's gonna do one of them, right? I mean, he's got to make something happen this year. He's got to go out there and he's either got to be boom or he's gonna be bust. And unfortunately, when you're drafted in the top 10, you don't have an opportunity to be just okay. It's either you have to be great and show why they drafted you so high, or they just missed. That's what the narrative will be.
Or they write that other word behind you, bust. First round bust.
Right.
You don't want to hear that. And for someone that has a Jamarcus Russell Raiders jersey in the closet, that's not something that I want to hear for Tyree. So hopefully he proves it this year. Drop your comments on who you think will have to prove it this year. And if you're listening to this on the audio side, you can always check out our YouTube page as well and drop some comments. Coming up next, there's still some free agents available, but also after training camp, there will be some cuts by other teams. So Link and Q are going to talk about what free agents maybe the Raiders should still be eyeing, or if they should hold off and wait a little bit. So keep it locked here on the Locked On Podcast Network. You're listening to or watching the Raiders Squad Show. All right, guys. So there's still a bunch of free agents that are available. We've kind of talked about this a little bit briefly. We've talked about some of the big names that were in the rumors. And sometimes you got to talk about the rumors when it is not the season, not training camp. We're in a little bit of a slow period. So we're going to give you some entertainment regardless. But there are some big names still available. We mentioned Gilmore last episode. Obviously the secondary is very young. There's questions on the defense. Link, obviously, O-line guy said O-line gets injured. Maybe we should look there. Link, we'll go with you first. Are there any free agent names that you're seeing right now that you think the Raiders should be interested in, or should they hold off until the other teams start making cuts and then they can pick up some guys?
Well, first of all, there must be something wrong with my head because I'm focusing on defense today. I don't know where I am, but I'm going to go back to the secondary. I know we talked about Isaiah Palomalo having a big year, and I'm expecting a big year without him. But there is a player that's still available that really intrigued me because I watched him extensively when he was playing with the Broncos. Justin Simmons, the safety. Now, last year he was with the Falcons. I'm not sure what has happened to this young man, 2-time All-Pro and Pro Bowler. I'm not sure what happened to him or where he's at or what's going on with him off the field, or why the people aren't as slobbering over him as much as I am with seeing him on the free agent market. But I just think I appreciate the way he plays in space, guys. Mm-hmm. He is a safety that plays well in space. And there's been times he's been somewhat of a ball hawk. And I think that's essential because the Raiders don't have people they can rely on for turnovers. And we're talking about getting turnovers and changing the field quickly. He's somebody I think can make a definitive part in this defense if for the right price. I'm not saying overpay for him. Again, I don't know what's going on with them. But, the thing is, Q, when you talk about somebody who might be able to generate turnovers, I think you might want to look at the safety spot. What do you think?
Yeah, no, he's definitely a guy with an intriguing name. I've done a little bit of, deep diving to figure out why he's still out there and available. And apparently there's only a couple of teams, maybe a handful of teams that he's really interested in playing for this year.
Okay.
Now, I don't know who those teams are, but that's what the word has been, is that, okay, this guy is interested in a couple teams, a couple defensive coordinators that he knows really well. He knows he fits in their system, and he's just kind of waiting and seeing until training camp happens. So we'll see what happens with him, but that's definitely an intriguing name for every reason that you pointed out. I honestly think that the Raiders are in a good position right now to just kind of wait and see until training camp, right? Mm-hmm. Go ahead and allow training camp to open up, see what you have with these young guys for, maybe a week or so, couple weeks, start to get, into pads and get some stuff going. And then, start to look around if you don't see the results that you like, or if you don't see the growth that you like, and you see guys making mistakes and then making the same mistake. And then again, make it, I think that they're in a really good position right now. And I think that they feel like they're in a good position to kind of wait and see. They do have that salary cap space that they could use if need be. But I think that they're going to do more of a, in case emergency, break glass, as opposed to go out and get a guy, right now just for the sake of going and getting a guy.
I think what we have to be careful for, guys, careful of, I should say, in this position, when you have this money to spend and you see a lot of notable names out there, don't be name crazy.
Right.
Don't.
Yeah.
I'm serious, because sometimes they come with a big price tag, and there were people that approached me, talking about the offensive line situation with the Raiders. They were saying, well, what about Tyron Smith, the former Cowboy tackle that's still out there? The only problem I have with that, and I think Tyron's a future Hall of Famer, the only problem I have with that is I don't want you to put new tread on an old tire. He's an older guy. He's had his fair share of injuries. And don't just go after a namesake because you think that's what you need for your team. You don't need that namesake. What you need is players who are going to be active, who are going to contribute to this culture, this locker room that we talked about. Not necessarily saying all players would, but there are some times where you get those check chasers, those guys that just want to try to make that final splash and just like, look, man, I'm just here for the ride and the free food. So you don't want that. That's what you have to be careful for in free agency.
And the Raiders were that for a while, Link.
Absolutely.
The Raiders were that team where you'd see guys at the end of their career and, they're signing their free agent deal with the Raiders, and they would overpay these guys, and they would go out there and do nothing, and that would be just what Lincoln said. They were check chasers. They were getting don't
get me started on a couple of well-known names, Hall of Famers that I've always said aren't Raiders. We're not going there, but I'm just saying.
I'm right there with you. We don't even have to speak on those.
We don't have to speak on them. We already know who they are.
Absolutely, yes. There you go. I agree 100%.
Well, I'm going to speak on one name. I remember when they signed D'Angelo Hall, and this was the name. Like, as a Raiders fan, I was like, we got D'Angelo Hall. This is great. I'm excited. And he was on all the posters for the Raiders coming into that season. And then the season happened, and that was
man coverage. He couldn't play man coverage. They traded for him. They had Nnamdi on the other side who could man up anything. Nnamdi could man up a wall. I mean, that dude was that guy. But D'Angelo Hall was on the other side, and he was playing 10 to 12 yards off. And it just it never worked. What was he there? 8 games?
Yeah, and then he got himself out of there, right? And then I think he went to Washington and like balled out, and it was tough tough to watch. It was very, very tough to watch. So I think you guys are right in terms of maybe not go for the biggest name, because I think the one really cool thing about Pete Carroll and what Patrick Graham is going to continue to do in this defense, because they're sticking with him, is that Pete Carroll's been able to really help players grow. I mean, you think about the Legion of Boom, and there was a couple of comments in the comments saying, can the Raiders create a Legion of Boom? That's a lot of pressure. But when it comes to developing, I feel like you got to trust in Pete Carroll, and you got to believe in what he's trying to build. So I want to go to the aspect of like waiting for cuts for other teams, right?
Certainly.
Is that kind of the smarter route to probably go? Because a bunch of teams are going to make cuts, but there might be some really good pieces that you can pick up that might not cost as much as like Asante Samuel Jr.
For sure. Absolutely. I think that's the way to go. And there's going to be teams that not only are just going to release guys. Lincoln knows this really well. They're going to release them with the belief that they're going to clear waivers and they're going to be able to put them on their practice squad. And that's when really good talent evaluators and really good scouts and everyone is scouring the waiver wire, and they're not letting anything slide by. All of a sudden, wait, hold on. They let that guy go. It happened to the Raiders a couple years ago. They had a couple offensive linemen that they thought were going to just slide through waivers, and then all of a sudden Seattle went and picked them up. So there's guys like that are going to pop up where they're going to get cut with the expectation that they're just going to re-sign them to their practice squad, and then the Raiders will have an opportunity to pounce on them. So I think that slow and steady will win the race. I think that they'll be fine with that. They just have to be on their A game, and I believe with the front office, the way they put things together, they will be doing just that.
Just an added caveat to what Q's point is, you're not supposed to cut an injured player. So that's first and foremost. So that that they're healthy. And if they do cut them, they're trying to, as Q is talking about, trying to make the waiver wire to put them on practice squad. And I've known teams that have done that over the years since practice squad has been expanded to sort of hide players or try to hide players. Again, it depends on, first of all, it depends on the individual. It depends on the player. Is he check chasing? Is he looking for something? Is he hungry for a job? Is he willing to work with you and maybe find a way to get you in and approve its contract? There have been plenty of guys I've known over my career and time of covering the Raiders that have had prove-it contracts. And back in the day, Al was notorious for that. May he rest in peace. Giving guys a prove-it contract. Just show me, come in for 1 year. Let me see what you can do. Let me see if you're a good fit. And then they'll take care of you. They always did. So that's something that has yet to be seen. But when you talk about a team that's basically practically made, it's already set. There's just, you want to fine tune some pieces. I say wait till after training camp before you try to make a big splash, and don't be a name chaser as well.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're a check chaser or you're chasing that big name, it does bring excitement. But do you guys think that developing these young guys, because if you bring in a big name, say you bring in like a Zadarius Smith or something, or you bring in Asante Samuel Jr., who I'm really big on, but then it kind of takes away from a growth of a player. Right. And I think specifically when you take a look at the secondary, there's a lot of young guys, but there might be some young guys that show out this year. Right. Like we talked about a Darian Porter, I think he'll likely start, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, I don't know, but like the talent's really young,
Early.
but right?
Yeah. Training camp first. The depth chart is nothing right now. It's just words on paper right now. It means nothing at this stage of the game.
Yeah. So would you guys kind of say that letting those young guys kind of develop would probably also be kind of smart instead of like pulling in that big name? Because then they're going to take away minutes from a young guy. But at the same time, you kind of want a little bit of depth in terms of, having a vet as well. Link, will go with you first.
Well, for me, it's one thing is you don't want to slap your scouting department in the face. Okay. The thing is that you've got these guys on the team for a reason because you think they can produce. Mm-hmm. If you go out there and get a big name vet for whatever reason, whether it's you want to sell tickets or whatever, you kind of slap your scouting department in the face because you want to give your scouting department a chance to shine. There's a reason why you hired these guys to evaluate these people, and I want to bring them in. I want to showcase what they're able to do. You can't do that on the sideline. And so for the future prospect, and not only this season, but pushing forward and the culture, I don't want to have a lot of flashy names out on my roster that don't produce. When I've got a lot of young guys who are waiting in the wings, waiting in the shadows, waiting for their time to shine, to go out there. Now they're going to take their lumps. Yep. Guys on the other side of the ball get paid too. So let's not make a mistake about that. But when taking those lumps, how do they grow? How do they respond? How do they get better? For the future's sake, keep as much as your young nucleus as possible. Of course, you make the adjustments for injuries and other transgressions, whatever might happen, but you keep it as much as possible, as long as possible, to show what they're capable of and give them a chance to play.
Yep, I agree 100%. And especially if these guys can hit, then all of a sudden you've got your core and they can grow together. Yep. I fully believe in allowing these guys to go out there and have their opportunity and try to grow. I mean, you're not going to get better if you're not getting reps, right? I talked about DeCam Richardson. He didn't have a fantastic rookie year at all, but he had a lot of great experience that he got. So he's already, now he kind of knows what the speed of the game is like, what he did good his rookie year, what he didn't do good his rookie year, and what he needs to build on. It's hard to learn how to play if you're standing on the sideline watching, like Lincoln said. You've got to be in the action. You only get so much action during training camp and practice even, so you're not going to be able to get that much needed experience unless you're out there playing. I do believe this Raiders team, Pete Carroll, John Spytek and company, are going to allow these guys to go out there and throw them in the deep end and sink or swim and give them that opportunity to really grow. I think that's why they're excited about a lot of these young guys. That's why John Spytek went and drafted 11 guys. I mean, he made so much wheeling and dealing during the draft that he came up with 11 draft picks. And just look at Tampa Bay. After Tom Brady left, after they won that Super Bowl and all the older guys retired, that was one of the youngest, if not the youngest roster in the league that was out there competing. The only guy that wasn't young was the quarterback, Baker Mayfield. Everyone else was a 1-2 year guy, and they were out there competing at a very high level. John Spytek knows what it looks like. Pete Carroll loves to work with young guys, and I think that's the plan moving forward.
Yeah, you got to trust the process. And also, I love it when teams and organizations build through the draft, because then we get to see the growth of it all. Before we get up and out of here, Link, you mentioned it. You said, when you're chasing that check, you're also chasing you mentioned food. Like, what are you talking about? Is the food really good that the Raiders serve up there?
Have you not been to the facility?
I haven't been to I've been to the game.
Hip her up, Q.
Oh, hey, Chantel. Yeah. Yes, the food is phenomenal, man. There's a reason why guys don't leave in the off season, man. They're getting there at the facility.
And there's a reason why 300-pounders get bigger.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's why JPJ was trying to lose weight heading into this year, so he could enjoy all that food too.
Don't mess with Taco Tuesday. Let me just say that. All right.
We know how you feel about Taco Tuesday. We learned that in the first episode. Raider Nation, if you like the content, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Remember, the Raider Squad show is on Monday and Wednesdays at 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time if you're on the East Coast. Make sure to hit that